Have you ever thought about how your lawyer can help you leave your legacy? A legacy that you are building now, the story that you are creating now that will actually be able to stand the test of time when you are gone, instead of succumbing to sibling fights and that money-grubbing ex who's coming out of the woodwork and any of the drama that happens when people, good people like yourself, pass away. Well, today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Adriana Brava, who is an attorney at law. She focuses on estate planning law, and she also just so happens to be a graduate of my program, Spark the Stage. Spark the Stage is the program that helps you become a professional, authentic, and compelling speaker in just about 6 weeks. So you will get to hear some of the stories that she unearthed during the program and how they helped her develop a more refined perspective on the relationship between legacy, estate planning, and law. You'll also in this episode get some tangible tips on things to do if you're thinking about your own legacy, the story you want to leave behind for future generations. All right, if you are ready to dive in to your legacy, then my friend, let's go.
Welcome to the Flourishing Entrepreneur Podcast with Alea Harris. If you're looking for actionable ways to overcome communication and differentiation challenges by sharing radically authentic stories, you are in the right place. Listen in and learn how to stand in the power of your unique narrative to transform your personal life, business, and workplace culture. And now, your host, award-winning international speaker, strategic storytelling consultant, and Japanese whiskey lover, Ruby Coral's mom, Alea Harris.
Hi, Adriana. Welcome to the Flourishing Entrepreneur Podcast. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm good. It's good to be here. Good talking to you.
I am so happy to talk to you. One, because I'm always happy to talk to you. So there's that. And two, because you are the first graduate from Spark the Stage that I've had the opportunity to have on the podcast. It's like a proud mama bear moment.
You should be. It was a really great class. I highly recommend it to anyone on the fence. Take it. Just take it. Working with you and being in close proximity with you is awesome.
Oh, well, thank you. And the best part about you being in the class, though, in addition, obviously, to being with me, obviously, is that you got a chance to learn how to unearth your stories. So that's the beginning part of Spark the Stage is, what story are you telling? What story do you want to tell that's important? And how do you weave it all in? And so you began your journey unearthing your crisis stories and the successes and the gifts, but we kind of started hitting it hard by telling me all the stuff you've been through. How was that process for you?
Well, it was a little bit difficult. It was difficult to purposefully think back about moments in your life that you were in crisis, because you kind of want to forget that in a lot of levels. You want to forget that. And so actually going and intentionally thinking about it was very deep right away.
So when you were going through, because when I've gone through, my experience has been like, oh, I thought I had moved past that, or I had things that came up like, I didn't really want to think about that. That's why I haven't been thinking about it for several years. Why am I making myself at that point in time thinking about this? Did you have any feelings of not wanting to see the crises that you've been through, not wanting to revisit them?
Some of them, yeah. Some of them were fresher, like being laid off from a job you were at almost 2 decades, and then other ones were not as fresh, like divorce. That at the time felt like, my life as I knew it is over, and not really understanding what the next chapter, and there was just so much fear surrounding that. But you're looking back at it with like, over 10 years ago, and now you're like, you know what, I did pretty good. I got through that crisis in one piece, a lot more successful than I thought it would be. And I moved on, And so you look back at it and you realize that you're stronger for a lot of these crises that come your way.
And the whole point of telling the story is that you're stronger and you figured it out so you can help other people figure it out, right? So I'm going to basically, we're going to have a moment here, Adriana. We're going to have story time with Adriana Brava. That, for the record, sounds like a YouTube channel. If you wanted to create that, I would recommend it now that it's coming out of my mouth. But I want you to just tell us some of those stories that you unearthed. Talk to us about what you went through, how you felt when you were going through it, and what are the lessons that you learned in order to help other people, overcome similar situations. Because your stories, at least the ones that I've heard, I don't even know if you're going to tell ones I've heard or haven't heard. This is exciting for me too. Your stories are powerful and they're incredibly helpful. You're a successful human being. You're a lawyer. You're gorgeous. You're killing it on the gram, right? If any of you have not hung out with Adriana on Instagram, you should. She is a real queen. And yet you still have things that you've overcome. And I think that in and of itself, seeing you in your glory as someone who has a story to tell is powerful. So are you ready for me to ask you the question to get you to tell your first story?
Sure, I'm ready.
Okay. So Adriana, tell me a story about a pivotal moment in your life and how it shaped you.
Okay, I'm going to go there. I'm going to go with the divorce story. I have never really talked about it publicly, but I do feel there's a lot of value in that because, I am an attorney, but I do not do family law, but I get a lot of calls about this. And so going through it has definitely been something that I can relate to what they're going through. I could understand. I could see that relationships are complicated and people stay for different reasons. And so it's helped me at least guide people through that initial shock or initial decision that they may have made themselves. So just depending on what side you're on.
So talk to me about what did you feel when your divorce was happening? And then what are some of the lessons that you've learned from it specifically that you could use to help other people?
Okay, so when I was going through it, I was not the party who made the decision to separate. Although I think there would have been a lot of reasons. In hindsight, it was a good decision. But at the time, I just felt like I'm blindsided, even though I really wasn't, now that you're really thinking and looking back. And so at the moment, I just felt like I felt a lot of shame. I felt like a failure, like I just failed in like one of my biggest life goals. I felt like I should have been able to fix this. I don't know what's going to happen regarding the custody of our son. I don't know what the judge is going to say. I don't know how I'm going to pay these lawyers. There was all these, I don't know what's going to happen. And so it was like a big wall of fear that I had to basically work through. And what are my friends going to say? And what is my family going to say? And we were seen kind of as a power couple. He's a fellow lawyer also. And so I think people kind of had us up on this pedestal, wrongfully so. And, it was a shock to a lot of people. And so I had to face that because there was no other way. There was no other direction. And so because I've navigated the family law system as a litigant, not as an attorney, it really gave me a whole new perspective for how people feel dealing with lawyers and how they slightly hate lawyers And I
For the record,
understand.
Adriana is the least hateable person on this planet. She's not one of the lawyers that she's talking about right now.
No, I'm not. And I really try to, because I understand what it's like to go into a system that you just don't know what's going to happen. And you have to totally put your faith in somebody else's hands and pay them for it.
And pay them for it. Whether they get you the outcome you want or not, you pay them for it. Crazy.
Absolutely.
So what are 3 pieces of advice that you would give to people that are going through divorce and having to deal with the lawyers and all of that jazz that you had to deal with?
Okay. One of the things I think that was very helpful, and at the time I hated it, at the time I just did not like it, but the judge, in his infinite wisdom, and he was new to family law, he said, this is like my first trial, this is, so what he made us do, which I think was ultimately what made us successful co-parents, is he ordered us to go to co-parenting counseling. And at the time I was like, what? We're going to go to counseling? We're like separating, so, but it was good because we learned how to deal with the problem, how to talk it out, how to kind of forget our pettiness that we were going through and all the turmoil in our hearts, and just focus on what's best for our son. And that was so helpful that over time, we didn't need that anymore because we figured out, okay, we're going to go here. We're going to pay this lady. We already know what we have to do. And after a while, it was just, okay, we know what to do. And I'm happy to say that very recently, we actually, the 3 of us went to dinner to celebrate my son's admission to college. And that, like 15 years ago,
Oh my God.
I would have thought it's never going to happen. And so, we're not buddies, but we can do things like that are important moments in my son's life because we've worked through a lot of our drama. And so that's one of the things. Work through your drama with a professional, licensed person for yourself and also with your co-parent if you have children. So that, I think, it's really 2 pieces of advice. Don't use your lawyer as a counselor because they're going to be so happy to have you on the phone talking about fighting over who gets the car or who gets the silverware because they're charging you, $500 an hour. So they are more than happy to talk to you.
I would be more than happy. We could talk. You could just have me read you the ABCs and I'd be like, would you like it in a vibrato voice or maybe in a high pitched voice? What do you want from me for $500 an hour?
Exactly. So the other thing is, to basically try to take out your emotions when you're conversing with your former spouse. Don't take all the past baggage that you have, check that at the door because that's not going to be helpful for you. Work that with your therapist. Yeah.
That's great. That's great advice. Great story structure. Again, still a proud storytelling mama over here. So we've determined, obviously, that you are a lawyer and you've had relationships with lawyers throughout your divorce. But talk about the type of law that you do.
Okay, so I do estate planning. I pivoted from workers' comp, which I did a long time, into estate planning, mostly because organically things started happening in my life and around me that made me interested in, hey, there is a whole area that I think is not really well talked about or addressed. People dying, funerals, things that, people fighting over things that didn't have to be that way if somebody would have planned better. And so those kinds of things started coming into my life. Now I'm in my 40s, and so you have midlife problems that you're starting to see, aging parents. And so
are you going
really
through a crisis?
me.
Are you having a midlife crisis? If you are, I will send the chocolate. And if I had enough money, girl, I'd send a Lamborghini to go with it, but I don't.
I know, but I am having a lot of what I would call sandwich problems. You've got young kids still, but then you've got aging parents, and you're kind of trying to help them both out in some ways. So
sandwich problems. Interesting. Do continue. So you're doing your estate planning, and what is that? That's wills, that's trusts. What else are we talking about?
yeah, it's legacy planning is what I like to call it, because it's part of your legacy. I like to say that legacy planning is more than just the legal. Obviously, legal is totally important, but yes, your wills, your trust, your powers of attorney. We just had Jay Leno in the news. He had to go get permission from a judge to take care of his wife. Now his business is all public. It didn't have to be that way. Over powers of attorney. He might have had a power of attorney, but maybe it wasn't written to include that power to make a trust. So you have to know what you're signing and why you're signing it. So all of those things, I think, people are not educated. He obviously didn't have money issues. It's not like he doesn't have access to attorneys, but he might have not known what he should have signed. And especially because dementia, which is what, according to all the news, is what his wife has, it doesn't just hit you one day. Like, you don't just wake up with dementia. It's kind of a slow thing. You start forgetting things. You start forgetting people's names. And so there are moments of clarity. There are moments where you know who you are, you know who the other people, and so you have mental capacity to sign these things. So that just means they prolonged it. They didn't want to deal with it. And it is sad that now it has blown up into a whole court issue where he's going to have to pay a lot of money, and it's going to be public, all this private business. So, yeah.
Well, that's interesting too, because you talk about it being public versus private, and for me, it's about controlling the narrative. What narrative do you want to have if we're talking about storytelling? Jay Leno, for whatever reason, we're not there, but for whatever reason, was not able to control the narrative at this point in time because it had to become public. Not everybody, is going to care if I have to do the same thing that Jay Leno does because I'm not a huge public figure like he is, but it still will require oodles and oodles of money and time and unnecessary stress. And I'm still not controlling the narrative. And if it's me that I'm thinking about my kids and my legacy, I then am tarnishing the very end of my legacy by making everybody work so hard by not setting everything up for me in the first place. I know that's something that we've talked about, you and I, about what is your legacy, and you approach it very differently from a perspective of relationship and storytelling. Can you talk a little bit more about that? What legacy means to you, what storytelling means to you in relationship to legacy?
Yeah, legacy to me is, once you're gone, what are the memories that you're leaving your kids? What are the values that you want to instill in them? So for me, one of the big things that I want to be a cycle breaker, I guess, is what my legacy is. And so when I was growing up, we didn't have a lot. We, were in survival mode. My mom was an immigrant from Mexico, so she just was like doing the day-to-day. So I want to be able to do more for my kids. And I know that each generation, they're doing the best they can. So it's not shade to any previous generation, but I want to unlock generational wealth. I want to create generational wealth. I don't want them to be struggling like, we were. And so I want them to have travel be a part of their life. I want them to open their eyes to a whole new world. And I think that's so powerful when you take that chunk of time out and you're in a different place and you're learning right there along with your kids, because you're like, living history. Say you're walking in the streets of Rome, everything's like history there, So that's so powerful. And no matter what happens, if I die tomorrow, if we never travel again, like, none of that is going to be taken from them because they've had that memory and it's locked. And also because of that, it unlocks other things that you don't really think about at the beginning. So like, I'll have my daughter, she has big asks because she knows that we can do things if we decide to. And she'll be like, can we go to Paris for the weekend? And I'm like, we've not done that. But I mean, I would have never thought to ask something like that ever in a million years when I was her age. So it just kind of gives them a boldness and confidence that they can do things instead of having their world so limited. And so that's the kind of legacy I want to leave. I want to leave a legacy that it's something not necessarily tangible, although I do want to leave them money if I can, and you want to do all that good stuff. But they're also never going to forget these memories, and they're going to be stories that they're going to be able to tell their kids that they did. And so that's the storytelling aspect of legacy. Like, this is what I did. This is what I learned. These are recipes that I've learned. And so they pass it on. And that's, to me, true legacy, where you're no longer here, but what you did is still impacting future generations.
And how does setting up a will, setting up a trust allow you to maintain that legacy for future generations, your values, your story, the vision that you've had for yourself and your family? How do you help people do that with the documents that you create?
Okay. So in a trust, it's a little known fact, you actually can make it restrictive. Now, there was something that was recently, it kind of went viral, I think, where somebody's like great grandfather set up this trust, generations ago, but they were afraid that people would want to come into the family because of money reasons. And so they put in a restriction where if you're going to be engaged, you get engaged, and for 1 year you don't have, physical contact with your fiance. And apparently they have never had a divorce since that has been put in place, because that's how they ensure they're marrying the right people. So I when I heard that, I thought, wow, that's legacy right there. That's legacy. And so you could do things like that.
He's definitely building a strong family, right? Whether it's your speed or your style or not, when I heard that, I heard it from you when you told me. I was like, whoa, like that is some gangster stuff right there, man. Like, if you want my money that I worked hard for, you're going to make sure you actually love whoever you're marrying in my family. I think that's amazing.
That is amazing. And it's also, you're not depleting what you worked your whole life for. So people use these tools to avoid or minimize capital gain taxes. So yeah, instead of giving that big fat check to the IRS, they're going to get to keep it, whoever's benefiting from that house. And also, there's ways that people can become still eligible for public benefits without like getting rid of all their assets, because they can go into special kinds of trusts that, depending on who you're working with, would structure it for you. So it just depends on everybody's situation. But you don't want to have to deplete everything you work so hard for, because now you need a skilled nursing facility. And in California, actually, they just made it a little bit easier for people to, not have to give back the government, basically money for these things that happen at the end of your life. So, but there's a lot of these Medicaid planning type of deals so that you don't deplete everything and you do leave something for your family. There's also the restrictions that we talked about. If you feel like, I want to ensure this money gets to my grandchildren or great-grandchildren, there's also restrictions for that. I do have to caution you that you don't want to put it so restrictive that it's like an extension of a parent's pocket, where you're always having to ask permission from like a fiduciary to get money so you can go on a vacation. So you don't want to make it too restrictive either, because I just had a situation where somebody's dealing with a very restrictive trust that is only for special needs, and the gentleman is not liking the situation. So you want to...
I wouldn't imagine he would be. You're like, my mom and dad are gone. Then it goes straight from thank you for the guidance and for passing down wisdom to keep our family together too. You cheap little such and such. You are stingy with your money even in the grave. Like, it's a different type of legacy you end up leaving, right?
Exactly. And that is basically what they're doing. They're ruling from the grave. They're controlling from the grave. They're gone, and what they said goes. And there's nothing you can do about it. So you have to be.
It's about balance. It's about balance.
Yes.
So we've had also conversations, which I thought were fascinating, because people listening to you might say this conversation's not for them because they aren't Jay Leno, they aren't bazillionaires, they don't have huge buckets of cash laying around. All they have to leave is maybe a fur coat, some pearl earrings, and a smile. And so they're like, why would I ever need to estate plan? My legacy isn't grand enough. And I really like how you think about this. Can you share your thoughts on leaving a legacy regardless of the size of your pocketbook?
Okay, so I think this is the type of thing, even if you have very little assets, this is the type of thing where people will fight about and stop talking to each other because I wanted the wedding band and she took it and I was promised that. And so you want to avoid the fighting. You want to keep the family in harmony, even if you would be surprised, especially if there's very little assets or like just a few jewels, because people will fight about it. People will fight about it starting with the funeral. Who's going to pay for the funeral? They're the ones who are going to control how it goes. I have a personal family story on that I've never talked out loud about, but...
Well, now you definitely have to tell it. You definitely 1,000% need to share.
I don't know. I don't remember if I shared it in the beta, but my grandmother, she was brought up Catholic, and a lot of, my aunts and uncles were brought up Catholic as well. But she had this moment of conversion, and she became Protestant, and then she tried to convert all of her kids, and she was always talking about, how... I don't want to get into like all the specifics, but she was not for the Catholic Church anymore. I'll just say that, not to offend any of the audience listening. So when she passed away, the person that was most financially able to contribute and set up was Catholic. And so who presided at her funeral? A Catholic priest.
That's just wrong. That's wrong.
I didn't say anything at the time. I was still kind of young. And I just thought like, oh, she's rolling over in her grave right now because I don't think this is what she would have wanted. But, at the same time, I didn't, it's not like we're putting money down. So those are the kinds of things that happen. And luckily there wasn't any, bad feelings about it or anything. I think we realized the funeral is for the living. And so the people who are alive have to take care of their feelings and do what they feel is respectful. So
what would you have done in a legal way, or what could your grandmother have done to ensure that she had a Protestant pastor as opposed to a Catholic priest?
Well, actually, funeral letters are not legally binding unless you set it up and you pay for it. I am paying off my funeral right now.
You're like, you're not gonna give me no random person talking about here. I paid for this.
That's right. No, and I have a nice spot on the hill with the view of like the ocean and the view of the mountains. It's really nice. So I was like, you know what? I actually need a post about that because I'm like, when are my kids gonna come? I want them to come and visit, and I want them to have a nice spot. So, but yeah, you take care of those things in advance. You write out your wishes in advance in a will. You can do that, or in a trust. But there's a letter of last instructions is what I would call it, where you say, this is what I would like. And if you pay for it, you can leave money for that. That's good. I think that's going to make it more likely to happen. Because if you're like, I tell my current husband, because I got remarried. That's the other part of the story. I was like, I want some mariachis. I want a big party. He's like, are you leaving me money to pay for this?
Pay for all these mariachis? Mariachis are not free.
That's right. That's right. So, it's just talking about it, opening the communication. It avoids a lot of fighting later on. It avoids a lot of disharmony. If you tell your folks right now, this is what I want, and then I think people are more likely to follow those wishes. And especially like power of attorney, if you don't want to be hooked up to a machine, yeah, you can make that legally binding. You're not leaving that decision for your kids to be fighting about because somebody wants to hold out and give you 10 years and let's see what happens. And someone's like, no, nothing's going to happen. You don't want that. You want to leave those things already decided in a legally binding way.
So you've already talked about how you want to be buried, where you want to be buried, the story and legacy you want to leave for your family, which for me is amazing because it's so super well thought out. And I'm sitting here thinking like, I should probably get on top of this. But I would love to know if you could ask the universe for anything right now and be 100% sure that you would get it. What would you ask for that would help you leave an even better legacy and write an even better story than the one you're writing?
That is a very thought-provoking question that was a little hard to wrap my head around. But I would say I would love to leave a legacy for my kids. Like, I want to be able to build something so big that they can continue it if they wanted to. And so I have all these, business ideas because I'm a newbie in business. I'm a longtime lawyer, but at this, I'm new at running my own firm. And so I think that the creativity is like the wheels are turning now, whereas before you were in employee mode and you're just like there doing your job. But now I'm being creative. I'm like, ooh, I want to do this. Ooh, I want to do that. And so I guess if I could, I would just launch all these business ideas I have, and then get my kids working with me and let them take over someday. So,
well, hopefully the universe heard that. We'll make it happen.
Yes. Yeah, I want to impact a lot of people. Well, I wanted to impact people. I want it to be good for people. I want to make estate planning not hard, not intimidating. And so I think about like, maybe I could make books like for people like planning. So there's all these ideas that I have. And so I think if I could 100% ask the universe, be like, help me make this, help me launch this so that it can impact the greater good. And it could keep families in harmony and my family could figure out how they can continue it. If they don't want to, it's fine. I don't want to force them to, my son wants to study science or whatever.
But they have the option. They aren't starting from scratch. Right. They have something they could continue. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to build something that outlasts me. Yeah. So
yes,
that's what I would
ask.
But that's a very hard question.
The woman that's talking about legacy. Well, I'm here to ask the tough questions, man. That's what this podcast is all about, asking tough, thought-provoking questions. And I loved your answer. And I think that if anybody's looking for estate planning, you've done a very good job of saying why they should pick you so far. But if you were to just wrap it up in a bow and say, why should someone pick you over your competition to help them with estate planning, what would that be?
Okay, because I listen to you. I want to know what your needs are, what your desires are. I don't want to just give you like 5 minutes of my time and then just say, okay, and then, give you some sort of legal Zoom type of deal. I want to, tailor it to you. And also understand what you want. What is your legacy? What are your concerns? What are your goals in this? Because if you design something that is not really towards your goals, then why are you just wasting money? And so that's one of the things. I don't want to give people something they don't need or they don't want. So that's
why we should pick you.
That's why you should pick me.
That sounds like an amazing reason to pick you. I mean, I'm glad you picked me to join Spark the Stage and bring out some of these stories and refine your concept of legacy and all of that loveliness. So thank you for picking me. And I'm just glad that we got to have this conversation today. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I really enjoyed working with you. Well, from the moment I saw you on the stage, I was like, I have to learn something from this woman, or I have to figure out how I can work with her. And you know what? The universe decided to align perfectly. So
that's why I say if you have something to ask the universe, now's a good time, because magic happens on this podcast, baby, magic.
Yeah, well, maybe like the lotto numbers could also come to me, you know.
Yeah,
so.
And then you gotta share, because you know the magic happens again on this podcast. So share the love.
Sharing is caring.
Okay. Well, Adriana, thank you so much for being here. I hope you have the most wonderful day and lots of love and blessings to you.
You too. Thank you.
Wowee. I don't know about you, but I clearly have some work to do, because I want a lot of the things that Adriana was talking about for Ruby Coral, my daughter, that she is leaving to her kids. And I think that I might need to call her up to help me with that, because estate planning is incredibly important. Why would I be up in here talking to you about I'm a storyteller, legacy is so cool, it's dope, y'all, and I don't have the things in place to actually facilitate me leaving a tangible legacy? That's just a hypocrite. And I'm not up in here trying to lie in your face. So I'm going to go ahead and call Adriana and make sure actually my mama calls her too. Because, you know, you got to protect the legacy as the person on the receiving end and on the giving end. And I hope that you do too. I hope that you pick up the phone and call her. When she was in Spark the Stage as my program participant student, I got to really know her, and I really enjoy her heart for relationship building, caring about people and caring about the values that you care about, and helping you write those into documents that can take you into your next bodily spiritual transition. If you liked this episode, please go ahead and leave a review. 5 stars would be wonderful. And also be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Until next time, my name is Alea Harris. This is the Flourishing Entrepreneur Podcast, and I'm sending you lots of love, light, and abundance. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Flourishing Entrepreneur Podcast with Alea Harris. Vibing with what you hear? Leave a 5-star review to spread the love, and be sure to click subscribe. We wish you love, light, and abundance. See you next time.